Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So in the last class we were discussing the section in which Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya is describing the mind as the cause of both our bondage as well as liberation. So now, after describing that, he will be taking up the verses, a few of the verses, to describe that the attainment of purity of mind as a prerequisite for liberation. That as we saw, that the mind is responsible both for bondage and liberation. And as an aspirant, a spiritual aspirant, we all aspire for that liberation. So how mind can help us on our journey, in our spiritual journey, ultimately leading to the liberation, that will be discussed in the 175th verse. So what Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya is saying, Viveka Vairagya Gunati Rekat Shuddhatvam Asadya Mana Vimuktai Bhavati Atah Buddhimata Mumuksho Tabhyam Dhrirabhyam Bhavitavyam Agre. So, the path to liberation is the attainment of purity. So, by attaining purity, that is Shuddhatvam Asadya, till I attain the purity, that A prefix is used in the sense of encompassment. Till I attain that purity, the purity through the cultivation of Viveka Vairagya. This Viveka is the discrimination, Vairagya is the renunciation. And that also, it's not some practice which speaks of shallow renunciation. Gunati Rekat. Ati Rekat means adhikya, that's atishaya, that extreme, supreme dispassion, supreme renunciation, and that intense viveka and intense vairagya. That's what is indicated by the word Gunati Rekat, Ati Rekat. So, with that uncompromising renunciation and that firm discrimination, one has to attain that purity, and then the mind gets qualified for renunciation through the practice of intense viveka and vairagya. Mana vimuktai bhavati. So that's the only way one gets qualified for the ultimate liberation. Mana vimuktai bhavati. So a seeker of liberation must first be established in them. So these are the two practices on which one has to be established. So that's what is indicated in the last phrase. Tabhyam dhrirabhyam bhavitavyam agre. So one has to be established firmly, dhrira. That has to be the very strong foundation of our spiritual life. The very strong foundation of spiritual life is viveka and vairagya. So as we were indicating, that the word atireka indicates atishaya, extreme. That viveka and vairagya should be intense. Now what are the conditions of attaining such intense viveka? What's the viveka? The discrimination is nitya, anitya, vastu, vichara is viveka. That what is nitya, what is permanent, and what is anitya, impermanent. In this world, whatever we see is impermanent. This world of name and form is impermanent. In Vedanta, the word Satya means that which cannot be annihilated by any phase of time, past, present, future, which was, which is, which will be, in eternal present. As there is no transformation, the question of time, measuring it by time, doesn't arise. Anything which undergoes transformation, that alone can be measured by time. If anything is not transforming, the time factor falls off. It has no as such relevance in describing its existence. So the ultimate reality, the Sat, the Nitya, is something which is eternal, which is in the ever present, which is, as in the Sanskrit the word is used is Purana, Pura Apinavaiva. It's never old, it's ever existent. That conscious principle. So always discerning that conscious principle is appearing as this world of name and form, and this appearance is a flow. There is no as such sense of permanence in it. It appears at certain point of time, it disappears at certain point of time. So this is the idea of Viveka, this constant vichara, the constant analysis in your mind that what is permanent, what is impermanent. So when it comes, such type of analysis comes only when we have developed an yearning. That I am no more satisfied with this so-called samsara, the flow of life. I find that everything I attain in this world is ephemeral. It's not going to give me the eternal, everlasting joy. So is there something permanent behind it? This question leads to that intense search for that reality. So that mumukshutva is one of the qualities, first qualities to really develop that intense viveka. And when you have mumukshu, when you're in search, then only the question of approaching a teacher, a qualified teacher who himself has realized the truth. The one who has realized the truth, he alone can lead others from darkness to light. Otherwise, in the Upanishads, as in the Upanishads it has been indicated, if the teacher is not genuine, then it is just like the blind leading the blind. Andhe naiva niyamana yathandaha. So the teacher should be genuine. To such a teacher, a genuine student, both should be genuine. The genuine who has really developed that urge for liberation, he should approach. So the word Upanishad means that. Upa means approaching. Approaching means what? That once I reach a genuine teacher, I hear what he has to say about the spiritual dimension of our existence. I hear, that is Sravana. After hearing, I have to have Shraddha, faith in his words. Without faith, at the very beginning, if I start doubting, there is no question of getting established intellectually in that truth. First, I have to develop an intellectual conviction. So, if with Shraddha, with faith, that yes, what has been told, I accept with humility that I am yet to understand the true implication of its meaning. My mind is not yet prepared to realize the truth behind it. I accept it with humility, and I have the Shraddha, faith in the words of the Guru, that makes me to cogitate upon the words which the Guru has spoken. So Sravana leads to Manana. Sravana, Manana. So this is what is meant by approaching the teacher. A mumukshu approaches the teacher, hears the word of the spiritual dimension of his existence, related to that, all the things which the Guru has to instruct, he hears from the Guru, and then he goes on cogitating upon it. Through the process of cogitation, at last he develops an intellectual conviction. But that's not all. The difference between an academic knowledge and spiritual knowledge is here. An academician at last attains an intellectual knowledge, but it has nothing to do with his life. The life is not transformed. The knowledge is just something extraneous. He has that knowledge, he has acquired that knowledge. It as such doesn't in any way overhauls his personality. But in spiritual life, the knowledge which I get through my intellectual conviction, then I have to live my life according to it. I have to internalize those values, contemplate on them, live the life in such a way that my entire personality gets overhauled. My entire personality reflects the ideal. My life becomes an interpretation of that ideal. So that is the process of nididhyasana. So in the word Upanishad, the ni means nididhyasana. Upa means approach. Through Sravana and Manana I approach. Ni means nididhyasana. Once I have the conviction, I have to go on contemplating on it. Contemplating on my conviction. And then what happens? Then I develop the faculty to really distinguish between Shreya and Preya. So Viveka is not just mere hearing from the scripture that only Atman is and everything else is a mere superimposition. Anyone can hear that. But just by hearing does the Vivek arises? No. That's the process of internalization through the process of contemplation. I'm internalizing the truth. And then I find in each and every moment of my life, it has become a spontaneous. I know what is Shreya and what is Preya. Shreya means what is preferable, and Preya means what is pleasurable. So in life, constantly we go on confusing the pleasurable as the preferable. As very nicely in the Kathopanishad it has been said. What that? Anyat Shreya, Anyat Utaiva Preya. Te ubhe nanarthe purusham sinitaha. Tayo Shreya adadanasya sadhu bhavati hiyate arthat ya upreya vrinite. So in the very Kathopanishad, in the very first part, the second chapter, the very first verse of the second chapter of the first part, this is the verse, this is the mantra with which that chapter starts. That there are two paths. In our life, we are as if in the crossroads. We are in the junction of two roads. And there is a choice. I can choose any of this path. One is Shreya and another is the Preya. Shreya means that which will lead to emancipation. Preya is that which is apparently pleasant. So this Anyat Shreya, Anyat Utaiva Preya, but both have different goals. This pleasurable will give me immediate pleasure without giving me any ultimate satisfaction or fulfillment. But this so-called the path of Shreya, it may be quite difficult. It's not easy, but that is going to give me the ultimate fulfillment, attainment, which we are hankering for ages together, for lives together. So Tayo Shreya Adadanasya, the one who takes the path of Shreya, for him, the real good happens, sadhu bhavati. And the other, hiyate arthat yahu preya brinite. And the other meets the path of degradation. The path of prayer, as in the words of Ramakrishna, is Kolumbara Rasta, the path with a gradual slope. We never realize that we are going down. It appears as if we are moving on a flat plane, on a flat road. But when we have gone quite far and look back, we find that as it's a very gradual slope, we have really came down a lot of deterioration. And that's what the path of this apparent pleasure, the prayer is. That leads to hiyate. It leads to degradation. And then the next verse in the Kathopanishad, what is say? Shreyascha preyascha manushyameta tau samparitya vivinakti dhiraha. So here comes the faculty of the mind. The mind which has bound us with the apparent pleasures of prayer. But a dhira, a calm one, the one who is wise. Through the experiences of life, he has learned that ultimately by the pursuit of the prayer, we are not going to get that ultimate fulfillment. So such a person is the dhira, the calm one. So he has he can distinguish these two paths. Shreyascha prayascha manushyameta tau sampirata vivinakti. He can vivinakti means to discriminate. And Shreyo hi dhiro abhiprayas. And after discriminating, the one who is the dhira, he chooses the path which is preferable. Shreya. Shreya hi dhiro abhiprayaso vrinite. And the others, Preya Mando Yoga Kshemat Pranite. For Yoga Kshema. Yoga Kshema means what? In this yoga doesn't mean means our spiritual union. Here the Yoga Kshema means, yoga means union. Whatever I desire, when I get it, I am as if united with my object of desire. And Kshema means preservation. When I have attained the object of my desire, I want to preserve it. Whether it is wealth, whether it is relation, whether it is position, power in life, whatever it may be. I want to get united with the ideal which I am seeking. And once I get united, I want to be in that state. I don't want to lose wealth. I don't want to lose my relations. I want that kshema. We will find that as an ordinary human being, our entire life is nothing but the pursuit of this yoga kshema. And that speaks of the prayer. So the one who is a mumukshu, who has went to the teacher, heard the words of the scripture, cogitated upon it, and gradually developed that intellectual conviction that what is true and what is untrue, what is permanent, what is temporary. After developing that, he has internalized it so much that now in his life, the distinction between the Shreya and the prayer has become something habitual. That, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Je nachte jane, tar kokhono betale paha pore. The one, an adept dancer never, his steps, the step of an adept dancer never falls out of rhythm. It is always in rhythm. So that's the idea of this Viveka. So now he's established in Viveka. So such a person, through this total contemplation, has transformed his life. His reflexes has changed. As in the Bhagavad Gita we find that such a person who is also considered as Sthita Pragya, whose wisdom is established. So what is his characteristic? He becomes like a tortoise, kurmonganiva. Just the way when there is a danger in front of the tortoise, it withdraws its limb within the shell. So, for us, whenever there is a sense object outside, this world which is alluring our senses, whenever it is there, our limbs are protruded. We want to grab them. But for a dhira, he is as if like a tortoise. He sees them as danger. And his limbs automatically, the way the tortoise limb, as if automatically, spontaneously is withdrawn. So for a man of the one who is established in Viveka, for him, the reflex has changed. All his limbs as if gets withdrawn. He sees the apparent pleasure as actually a danger. And that's how he has got established in Viveka. So now we will understand that Viveka is just not like giving my vote. Oh yes, that in our political elections, this is the party to whom I ascribe. I find that these ideals appeal me. I go and give my consent. So it is not just like that voting. It is actually conforming my life with the ideals which has been spoken of. Then only you get established in Viveka. And then only we will understand why the word Gunati Rekat has been used. Ati Reka, Atishaya. It is not mere an intellectual consent. Our total life has got transformed. The next verse will speak of that what Atishaya, Vairagya means. Here in the second, in this line, we found the idea of what that intense Viveka is. Now what intense Vairagya is, that is again spoken of in the next verse, the 176th verse. So the intense Vairagya is ensured only if we never allow the mind which is like a tiger. The mind is like a tiger, always ready to pounce upon its prey, the sense objects. So if we are constantly moving in the forest of sense objects, this world is as if a forest of sense objects. And where if we are moving with our mind, the mind is like a tiger. It is ready to pounce upon them. So that's the thing, that we have to detach ourselves, keep ourselves at a distance from such forest of sense objects. That's the idea. That's the allegory Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya will be using to explain the idea of intense Vairagya. So what he is saying, Mano Nama Mahavyagra, the 176th verse. Mano Nama Mahavyagra Vishayaranya Bhumishu Charatyatra na gachantu sadhava ye mumukshava. So it's that Mahavyagra, a terrible tiger, ferocious tiger, called the mind. Mano Nama Mahavyagra. The mind is like a ferocious tiger, where it is roaming Vishaya Aranya, Bhumishu, that the vast forest of sense objects. So what we have to do? Let not this so-called a good person, a sadhu, a good person who seeks liberation should not go there at all. Charatyatra na gachantu sadhava ye mumukshuva. The one who is aspiring for renunciation, mumukshu. He is a good person, sadhava. So for him to go near that forest speaks of the danger. The tiger called mind will pounce upon the sense objects and thus gets entangled in the world of the senses. That's what our mind is. What it is speaking of? That if I feel that the world is impermanent and the Atman, the Brahman alone is permanent, and I think, oh, I have this idea in my mind. With this idea, even if I intermingle with the world, nothing is going to happen to me because this idea is something which is going to protect me. The Vairagya says, no, our mind is like a tiger. Know it for certain that when you are in the world of senses, that however, that in the words of Ramakrishna, Jatoi Shyana hona kano, you may think yourself to be very vigilant, Shyan. Kajoler ghore thakle kali lagbe. However vigilant you may be, if you are staying in a room whose walls are painted with the soot, know it for certain you are going to be tempted by that soot, however vigilant you may be. So don't be in that environment. As we always say, that the mind is constituted of innumerable mental modules, and these mental modules have fixed stimuli response conditioning. For a particular stimuli, a mental module will respond in a particular way, and our mind is constituted of such innumerable mental modules. But at a time, only one mental module gets activated. Now, who decides which module will get activated? We ignorantly think that I decide. But even in modern psychology, it is not we who decide. Among all those mental modules, the environment in which we are, that decides. In a particular environment, a particular module gets activated, and it has its own stimuli response conditioning. It will make me to respond to that stimuli in a particular way. But at the same time, the mind, which is a propaganda machine, makes me believe that I who have decided. That's how the mind is constantly befooling us. So that's why Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya is warning us. Don't be so confident that you may think that you have Viveka, and that Viveka will help you to practice Vairagya in whatever the situation of life may be. Know it for certain. It's not that simple. You have to maintain distance from the sensate objects. When you can do that, then you are established in Vairagya. That example which we gave in some other context, that to understand that what this Vairagya is. Now Latu Maharaj, Swami Adbhutananda, he was illiterate. But because of his pure, simple nature, Sri Ramakrishna accepted him as his disciple, and he used to render personal service to Ramakrishna. Now he used to come from another devotee's house every day. Initially, later of course he started staying in Dakshineshwar. Initially he used to come from the house of another disciple of Ramakrishna, Ram Babu. From his house he used to come to Dakshineshwar to render his service to Sri Ramakrishna. Now one day Sri Ramakrishna asked him, while coming from Ram Babu's house, which path do you follow? So he told, such and such a path. This is the easiest, shortest path. That's what I follow. And Ramakrishna asked, isn't it there is a shop, an alcohol shop there? Yeah, there is. Sri Ramakrishna knew that he belongs to a family, from a very poor family, who were like daily laborers. And you know that those who work very hard, they tend to develop the habit of having alcohol. After the day's work, to relax, they have. That becomes almost something like their habit. And Sri Ramakrishna knew that he came from such a family. That humble background he came from. Now Latu was innocent. He never had resorted to alcohol or anything. He was quite young and innocent boy. But Sri Ramakrishna felt that as in his family, such practices are there. So that inclination for having alcohol may be there in his mind, something in his subconscious mind of which he is still not aware. Now Sri Ramakrishna, for his spiritual welfare, after hearing that he comes to that path, and that the path on which that liquor shop is there, Sri Ramakrishna instructed him, never come through that path. That much only he told. Avoid that path. You shouldn't come. Just see that what Vairagya actually indicates. The forest in which the liquor is the sense object. The mind is like the tiger. Anytime it may pounce. Sri Ramakrishna told, never you avoid. And that's the speciality of the disciples of Ramakrishna. He took those words literally. That speaks of Shraddha. Just now we were speaking Shraddha. He never questioned. With Shraddha, he heard that, and that he took those words literally, and he took a roundabout path, which was almost the double of this path, the shortcut. And he used to come every day that long distance to avoid the liquor shop, not to pass by that. So this speaks of what has been spoken of here. This Mano Nama Mahavyagra. We shouldn't be too confident. The mind is like a tiger, always ready to pounce on the objects of the senses. Never be near it. Never go near this forest of sense objects. So Mahanama Mahavyagra Vishayaranya Bhumishu Charatyatra na gachantu Sadhava ye mumukshuva. So the terrible tiger called the mind wanders in this vast forest of sense objects. Let not a good person, a sadhava, who is seeking liberation, as a mumukshu, go near that. Na gachantu. He shouldn't go near that. So this is the thing which even we find again in the Kathopanishad, that what it says, that what's the nature of our mind and the senses. That famous verse is there, the famous mantra, Paranchi Khani Vyatrinat Swayambhu. That the Swayambhu, the Lord, has inflicted our senses in such a way that they always move outward, never go inward. Tasmat Parak means moving out. pashyati, na antaratman. It never delves within. And then what's the result of it? Is as it is always interacting with the world of the senses. We find in 2 verses in Bhagavad Gita that the degradation of the mind, how the mind drags us and kills us, deteriorates us. In the 2nd chapter, in the 62nd and in the 63rd verse, very vividly Bhagavad Gita describes that if I allow the mind to move out and always interact with the objects of the senses, the lion, the tiger, the mind called the tiger of this called the mind, is always ready to pounce upon that. When it pounces, what's the ill effect? In Bhagavad Gita, very nicely it has been mentioned. Dhyayata vishayan pungsa sangaste supajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate. That's the 62nd verse. The 63rd, krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhrama smriti bhrangshat buddhinashu buddhinashat pranashyati. So just with sequence it is mentioning that what's the harm? We may say the nature of the mind is to dwell in the sense objects. Let it dwell. As we find in the modern days, they say there's no heart, why you have to renounce it? But in Bhagavad Gita, what they are saying, can anyone deny that? That all the complications of the life which we find because of our dwelling with the objects of the sense objects. Every day in the news we see that so many crimes happening. Can anyone deny that this is the sequence which gradually leads us to deterioration? What it is saying? Dhyayata vishayan pungsa. When you are constantly contemplating on vishaya, on the sense objects, attachment grows. Sangastesu upajayate. Just we find it's a culture in the modern society that in the olden days, that when time permits, we used to go to the temple, the place of worship. But nowadays, the shopping malls are our place of worship. It has become. So even if there is nothing to be purchased, oh, I have some time, come, let's go to the shopping mall. So we enter. And we are going, we have no as such intention of purchasing anything. And I am passing just through some shop, and we find in the, there's what's hanging, a very nice overcoat is hanging. And I just start looking at it. That's what dhyayata, you are just looking at it. Dhyayata vishayan pungsa sangaste. And then suddenly, you also don't know. An attachment has grown. Sangaste. What? It is that overcoat is there, you are here, there is something, it has nothing to do with you, you had no plans to buy it. But now suddenly, even unknowingly, a desire has come. Let this be mine. That's the attachment. This mamatva has grown. Sangasta. Sangat sanjayate kama. Now the desire has arisen. I will just purchase it, I have to buy it. And most probably someone who is accompanying me, he says, Arey, you have so many overcoats. Why again to buy this one? And immediately I have started developing anger towards this person. Who is he? Just to advise me. I feel like I will have it. Whenever there is an opposition for my desire, a rage develops, anger. So that sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate. And from krodha what happens? Krodhat bhavati sammoha. In my mind, the do's and don'ts are there. I know what I should do in a particular situation, what I shouldn't do, what is beneficial for me, what is not beneficial for me. Just this say how our relations are gets affected just by our harsh words. It's just like throwing a stone on the glass. Once the glass cracks, you can never again mend it. It's that you say, oh, I have done a mistake. You may accept you have done a mistake, but can you again make the glass as it is? No. The relations are something like that. So I forget. I have developed anger, and immediately, most probably, I use some abusive language. Why? Because my mind is now deluded, sammoha. Samyak rupe moha. Deluded. I forgot the do's and don'ts. So, this krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhrama. My memory now fails. The do's and don'ts I forgot because of the delusion. And from the Sriti Bhrangshat Buddhi Nasha. Now, Buddhi is the determinative faculty. That the moment I am going to behave in a particular way, first the Buddhi says, yes, behave this way, behave that way. Say these words, don't say that words. So this is the determinative faculty. Nishchayatmika is the Buddhi. That Buddhi Nasha. That Buddhi is no more working. You have, what you say, has simply knocked out the Buddhi. Because your smriti, your memory has failed. So memory fail leads to Buddhi Nasha. And Buddhi Nasha, we all understand, leads to destruction, pranashyati. In our life, day-to-day life, we experience this. From where it started? From the contemplation of Vishaya. From that it started. So now you will find that why it is called Mahavyagra. From that it started and it led to the deterioration. So that's why that Kathopanishad, that is a verse which we are speaking, Paranchi Khani Vyatrinat Swayambhu, Tasmat Parak Pashyati Nantaratma, is the first line. That the senses are always moving outwards. That's the natural tendency. But if we allow the mind to resort to that natural tendency, it leads to distraction. So what's the way out? The second line of that Kathopanishad says, Kaschid dhira pratyagatmanakshat avritta chakshu amritatvam icchan. So this way I can never attain that permanent peace in life, tranquility in life. What to speak of peace? It is leading me to constant destruction. To come out of it, the dhira has to turn within, has to stop this constant association with the objects of the senses. That itself will take you to the ultimate degradation. From there it starts. So kaschid dhira. Very few indeed are those who are not in that bandwagon. We all feel what the world does, that's right. A few courageous one knows, no, the world is just as if riding a bandwagon. I don't want to be a part of it. I am apart from it. This is the journey of the alone to the alone. I need not be with the crowd. So that's why the word kaschit is important. Very few dhira, the wise ones, they know that the only way out is to be established in the self which is within. So this parak was something moving out. Pratyak is within. So pratyak atman aikshat. The self which is within. Aikshat, desiring that. What it does? Avritta chakshu. This is very important. The tiger is always ready to pounce on the object of the senses. So what's the way out? It has to cut off. So that speaks of avritta chakshu. Closing your eyes. Not only eyes. By chakshu, all the five senses has been indicated. That this disassociation of the sense objects from the senses, sense organs, that's what's meant by avritta chakshu. Why I am doing that? Because after all, there is no single fool in this world who wants suffering, who wants annihilation. Everyone wants to be amrita. We are already that. To realize that amritatvam icchan, to realize the eternity of my existence, you have to close your eyes, get dissociated from the self and get established in the self. And that speaks of that vairagya. So unless we are doing that, we can never get established. And it is the same mind which has forced me, dragged me to this world of the senses. The same mind, through this intense vivek and vairagya, again can attain that purification which leads him to that emancipation or the liberation. So that's been spoken of in the 165th and in the 175th and 176th verse. So now the next 4 verse, what it will be from 177 to 180. So previously it was said that there is no avidya apart from the mind. That it is the mind alone constitutes the ignorance. So now further to explain that how that mind is actually nothing but ignorance, how it binds us, that will be described in the next 4 verses. So the 177th verse, what it is saying, Manah prasute vishayan asheshan sthulatmana shukshmataya cha bhuktuhu sharira varna asrama jati bhedan guna kriya hetu falani nityam. So what is saying? That it is the mind which always produces for the jiva, manah prasute. From the mind it comes out, prasava. From the prasute means to give birth. So mind gives birth to what? It produces what for the jiva, who is the enjoyer? All the experiences of all sense objects. This vishayan asheshan. This all the experiences of the vishaya which we have is all this mind is producing. And all these experiences can be sthula, can be gross, and or shukshma. Sthulatmana shukshmataya cha bhoktu. So I am feel that I am the experiencer of the enjoyment that comes with interaction with the senses, and this can be either gross or it can be something subtle. What does it mean? That when I am really interacting with the sense objects, then it is something called gross, sthulatmana. But I need not always be directly involved with the sense objects. In dream, though I am not in association with the sense objects, the mind produces all the sense objects and do find pleasure in interacting with it. Not even in dream. Even sometimes when in our wakeful state we fantasize. We imagine the objects of senses, and I might find our mind do dwell with that. So that's being spoken of as a shukshma. So all this interaction of the mind with the sense objects giving me the sense of enjoyment, which may either be gross or which may be shukshma. And this what happens? All the distinctions. From that comes the sharira, varna, asrama, jati, bhedan. So what are these 4 distinctions? That with my body, this body can be of 3 types. It can be deva sharira, it can be manushya sharira, or it can be the pashu sharira. So that's what speaks of the sharira. That through these 3 bodies, in dream, I can dream that I have become a deva and I am enjoying all the heavenly celestial pleasures. So these are all the working of the mind. So it may be sharira or varna. Varna means the 4 castes. I can even impersonate myself as a Brahman or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra. So all these distinctions are produced by the mind. Even a Brahmin, when he is in deep sleep, ceases to be Brahmin. Only when he is in a wakeful state or when he is dreaming, he may think that he is Brahmin, Kshatriya, Shudra or Vaishya. But in deep sleep, when the mind is inactive, all these distinctions falls off. This what it proves? That everything is projected by the mind. So this jati, the varna, the asrama. Again, I can imagine myself to be a brahmachari, a student, or a grihastha, a householder, or a vanaprasthi, a retired person, or a sannyasi, a renunciate. So all these varna and jati. Jati is dependent on sharira. If I am having a devata sharira, if I am having a divine body, I am a devata. If I am a human body, I am a human being. So, and if I am having an animal body, I am a pashu, an animal. So this jati is dependent on the sharira. So accordingly, these distinctions all arise from the mind. And again, guna kriya hetu falani. So guna kriya, what is this? that guna, all the sense objects, how it is associated with the enjoyer, with the jiva, I may think it to be pleasurable or unpleasurable. So these are the guna. This pleasurable or unpleasurable is the guna, is a quality. Accordingly, I react to it, kriya. If it is pleasurable, I get drawn towards it. If it is not pleasurable, I get repelled by it. I run away from it. So this speaks of the kriya, the action. And the hetu. Hetu speaks of the various means we adopt to attain or avoid the objects. If it is pleasurable, to attain. If it is not pleasurable, to avoid. I adopt various means. There is the hetu. And phalani. By adopting the means, when I resort to the action, once I resort to the action, the fruits are all fixed. I am bound to experience the result accordingly. The good actions will lead to good results, the evil actions will lead to evil results. So all these things are actually of the mind. Whether you are a saint or a criminal, in a deep sleep you cease to be a saint, you cease to be a criminal. You are just you are in the deep sleep, Sushupti. All these distinctions, all the results which we accrue, all the experiences which we are going through, is a projection of the mind. Why? Because in deep sleep everything ceases to exist. When the mind is not, all this ceases to exist. So it is the mind which is creating this panorama. So that's the idea, and by creating this panorama is binding us to it. How it is binding? Because I am always free. I am beyond all happenings. I am as I am. But the moment the mind comes into picture, it creates all these distinctions, and through all these distinctions we are enjoying the world in a particular way. That's what this verse indicates. That's how the mind is binding us. And then in the 178th verse, what it is saying? That's the idea that after all the Atman is asanga, unattached. But because of the mind, it is getting deluded by the world. So what it's saying? Asanga chit rupam amu viho vimohya deha indriya prana gunai nibadhya ahang mama iti brahmayati ajasrang mana swakrityeshu phala upabhukteshu. So the Atman actually is pure intelligence, unattached to anything. Asanga means unattached. Which is asanga? The chit, the conscious principle, the intelligent principle, the essence of my being, the chit. That is unattached. But it gets bound because of the mind, binding him by the cords of the body. The mind makes that chit, that intelligent principle, attached to the body, as if binds it by the cord in the form of body, sense organs, the vital forces, and deluding him by concealing his real nature. So he forgets his real nature. That is what's amung bimohya deha indriya prana gunai nibadhya. It bounds him with all these fetters of body, the senses, the vital forces, and with all this he binds him and deludes him. He forgets his real nature. He starts thinking himself as the body, as the sense organs, as the vital forces. So that's how he gets deluded. And then the mind makes him wander with a sense of ahamta mamata. Aham mama iti brahmayati. It creates that sense of ego, and the projection of ego is mine, me and mine. This I and mine. The mind makes him to wander with a sense of I and mine. Aham mama iti brahmayati. So amidst this varied enjoyment of results produced by his actions. And this sense of me and mine is as that example which we give again and again. When the conscious principle gets attached with the body, the ego develops. And now whatever is favorable for the existence of that body-mind complex, it gets drawn towards it. Whatever is not favorable, it runs away from it. It hates it. So this dvesha, abhinivesha, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, everything develops because of ego. So all the actions again results from all this raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So that's what is being mentioned. All the actions, all these actions and the enjoyment which comes out of it is because of this ahamta and mamata. So all this has been the trick of the mind. So asanga chit rupam. Actually, I am that conscious principle. It is a mind which is deluding me. As in the Mundaka Upanishad, it has been saying that if you know that you are the conscious principle, then what happens? Atmanam chet vijaniyat. Ayam asmi iti, aham asmi iti, purusha kim icchan, kasya kamaya shariram, anusanjaret. So in the Mundaka Upanishad, this idea is there, that what's that? If a person realizes that he is the Paramatman, he is beyond all wants, he is beyond annihilation, he is beyond all transformation, he is as it is, without any need for its existence. It is always there as it is. Then what's the need for this suffering, the pains of the body? It has no need as such. There's aham asmi iti purusha kimicha. What are the how come the question of desires come to such a person? Kasya kamaya shariram. That through this body, the idea of enjoying the sense objects, how can it arise? It doesn't arise. So that's the thing which has been spoken of in this, the first portion, that asanga chiti rupam, that when you know that you are asanga, unattached, the question of enjoying the world through the senses can never arise. So hence, one who has realized his essential nature is always unattached. And as Chidananda, as being established in the self, in the bliss of the self, he desires nothing. And the mind with the sense of I and mine, that is the only thing which binds us with attachment to the body organs. So hence the cause of bondage is to be traced to the mind alone. The mind alone is the cause of bondage, because his mind is creating all those things. So that's being indicated in the 178th verse. And then now it is explained that through bondage, the mind is the cause of sorrow and suffering. That because of this bondage, mind again, first it results in bondage, and then all the suffering that comes out of it again is the trick of the mind, is the product of the mind. So what it is saying? Adhyasa doshat. Purushasya sangsriti adhyasa bandha amuna eva kalpitah rajah tamah doshavatah avivekina janmadi dukkhasya nidanam etat. That all this process of transmigration, sangsriti is transmigration. Man's transmigration is due to the adhyasa dosha, this evil of superimposition. Once I superimpose this body-mind complex on the self, that's the dosha. From that dosha, first the bondage comes, the bondage of superimposition that is created by the mind alone. That now, once I feel I am the body-mind complex, all my freedom is gone. As the self, I was the only thing that exists. The question of dependence, the question of losing independence comes when there is a second entity. When there is nothing apart from me. There is no question of fear. There is no question of bondage. Because I alone exist by my own right. Nothing is there to annihilate my existence. Nothing is there to obstruct my existence in any way. So the limitations, the bandha speaks of this limitation. The limitation when it comes, the moment because of delusion, I superimpose the body-mind complex on the self. So that's what is spoken of, adhyasa bandha sa eva kalpi. That is also imagination of the mind. It is imagination because when I am thinking myself as the body-mind complex, essentially I am still the self alone. It is a delusion which is creating the idea that I am the body-mind complex. So from that, rajah tama doshavat avivekina. So then, because of this sangsriti, because of this transmigration, what happens? Rajah tama doshavatah. This is the cause of the misery of birth, etc., for a man of non-discrimination, who is tainted by rajas and tamas. All this taint in the form of rajas and tamas comes only when I am bound in this psychophysical existence and I am going through this process of transmigration. So it is the cause. Avivekina janmadi dukkhasya nidanam etat. This janma itself is the cause of all our dukkha. So this is not a pessimistic attitude. It is a statement of fact. That life is suffering. When Buddha says that, many say that the Buddhist religion starts with pessimism. It's not pessimism. It's a fact. Can anyone deny that life is not a suffering? That however we may be submerged, deluged with the sensual pleasures of world, you will find that we can in no way avoid suffering. Because however we were deluged by the sensual pleasures of life, all the sensual pleasures are something which is ephemeral, it's flowing. I cannot grasp it. I cannot stay with it through eternity. So it is entailed. All our enjoyment is at last entailed for suffering and suffering alone. So that's the very fact of life. So this janmadi dukkha, it's a question of dukkha, suffering alone, because it's not permanent. It is going to end up in dukkha. Why it is happening? Because of tamas and rajas. What it speaks of? As you will remember that previously we have studied that there are two shaktis of Maya, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. What is Avarana Shakti? To give an example again and again, that when I see a snake in a rope, first what has happened? The real nature of the rope has been concealed. I don't see the rope at all. That is Avarana. This speaks of tamas, the darkness. I don't see the rope at all. And when that concealment has happened, then it's not that I am not seeing anything. I am seeing the rope as the snake. It appears, it is projected as something else. That's the rajas. That's the rajas which has been spoken of. That rajas speaks of projection. So this first, the mind, what it does, it deludes the self. It conceals the nature of the self. That is the tamas. And then it projects it as this world of name and form. That's the rajas. And once it has done, then this process of transmigration starts. I try to find the eternity through the body-mind complex, and that delusion leads to the process of transmigration. And from the transmigration, all the suffering that entails, all results from that. Everything again is the trick of the mind. It is a working of the mind. And then there's a conclusion in the 180th verse. What is saying? Atah prahu mana avidyang pandita tattvadarshina yena eva brahmyate vishwang vayuna eva abhramandalam. So here's the sages who have fathomed its secret, the tattvadarshi, those who have realized the self, they realize the tattva. There are these two words, as Swami Ranganathanji again and again is to indicate, mata and tattva. Mata is opinion, and tattva is the principle. The one who has known the truth in essence is the tattvadarshi. We are all having certain matas, opinions, but the one who has realized the truth, he alone is a tattvadarshi. So such a person, he alone is a pandita. In Sanskrit, the word pandi means the one who has the knowledge of panda is pandita. What is panda? Panda is the self. The one who has the knowledge of the self is pandita. Who is pandita? The tattvadarshi, who has known the truth in essence. So, he knows for certain that mind is synonymous of what? Avidya. Avidya means mind. As long as the mind is there, we are in ignorance. Go beyond the mind, we get established in the self. So they know it for certain. Yena eva brahmyate. As long as the mind is there, we go around in this world. We roam around. Just like Vayuna eva abhramandalam. just in the sky, when the clouds are being driven by the wind, the same way, when it is driven by the wind, what happens? The same sun, either it gets concealed by the cloud, or the cloud creates a pattern of light and shed. All these patterns are mere projections. It is only the sun is existing. He has been projected as light and shed because of the clouds which are being driven by the wind. Similarly, the mind, the moment it comes into existence, it's just like that cloud. It is being driven and it is creating all these so-called illusions. So, by this mind alone, the universe is tossed. This comes into existence. It is as if tossed out of the mind, just the way the cloud is being moved by the wind. So this is what has been spoken of in the 4 verses, that how the mind binds us. After saying that, the next verse that will be speaking of that what should be done by a seeker to come out from this delusion created by the mind and attain liberation. So for the seeker of liberation, what has to be done, that will be spoken of in the next verse, which we will again take up in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.